Hello everybody, I'm here to talk about Sprint today. I'm going to try to keep it concise, but yet hit all the core issues I'd like to cover. For context, so far the Halo games that have been played without Sprint are Halo CE, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Reach, and Halo 2 Anniversary. Moving on to the games that have played with Sprint, we have Halo Reach, Halo 4, and Halo 5. You may notice that Halo Reach is included twice. That is because late in 2011, 343 released a title update that added the option to remove bloom. MLG then used that option to create the no bloom, no sprint settings that were used from then on. Next, I'll talk about the pros and cons of the sprint game mechanic in Halo. Much of what I'll talk about is anecdotal, but it's backed by experience, logic, and reasoning. First, I'll talk about the pros. Pretty much the only pro in having sprint is the increased move speed. The increased move speed has plenty of benefits such as flanking, but unfortunately, while that is a good pro to have, it's also one of the only positives to sprint. High move speed is very good for Halo, but due to the core design of the sprint mechanic, the negatives far outshine the positives. That's not to say that high move speed is bad. Once again, high move speed is very good for Halo. Now I'll talk about why sprint does not belong in Halo and how it negatively impacts gameplay. First, I'll talk about lore. Lore should never determine the function of a game mechanic, especially in a multiplayer setting. That being said, if a Spartan can run, shouldn't he or she also have the ability to shoot while running? Shouldn't the Spartan also always be moving at top speed? Therefore, the sprint mechanic shouldn't exist, as without sprinting, your Spartan is already always moving at top speed. One of the biggest issues with sprint is that the ability slows the gameplay down. You heard that right. Sprint, as a mechanic, slows the game down, which is an ill-desired effect. The reason for this is how the mechanic itself functions. In order to sprint, you cannot shoot. This causes a large number of problems. Not being able to shoot results in fewer damage dealt, which results in fewer kills. Not only does sprint prevent you from shooting, but it also allows others to escape with their lives, when they should have died had they not tucked their head down and ran. Sprint as a mechanic caters much more to a defensive playstyle than an offensive. Sprint can also result in frustrating cat and mouse scenarios. If the enemy is no shield sprinting away, and you are sprinting after them around the corners, you cannot shoot while sprinting, but you must sprint to keep up with them. There is no solution other than to allow shooting while sprinting, or remove sprint. 343 Industries tried to combat this by delaying your shields from recharging after sprinting. Unfortunately, this also slows the game down, as players now hide in a corner after sprinting away, waiting for their shields to recharge before entering the action again. Another huge issue with sprint is how much it affects map design. Sprint forces map designers to jump through all sorts of hoops in order to balance a map around sprint. The map has to be elongated first of all. This defeats the entire purpose of sprint, because now it will take you just as long to get from point A to point B as it did with no sprint. But this time, to get from point A to point B in the same amount of time as before, you have to sprint. Otherwise, you will reach the destination slower. Sprint the whole way means that you will not be able to shoot. So overall, sprint just increased the amount of time it takes you to reach your destination. The map, after being balanced for sprint, has what is known as no man's land areas. Huge areas with no cover that force you to sprint across the gap. Any player not sprinting through that area is seen through big gaps of sightlines and are quickly shot at, forcing the player to sprint through these parts of the map. Designers also have to worry about jumps. Players can only hit certain jumps without sprint, whereas other jumps can only be hit with sprint. This adds a level of complexity to maps that is otherwise unneeded. So looking back, the biggest benefit to sprint is increased mobility. While this seems like it would increase game speed at first, this is not the case. Increased move speed is a good benefit, but raising the base move speed and removing sprint is the better option here. Sprint forces you not to shoot, which can create cat and mouse scenarios, elongates maps, increases map design complexity, encourages defensive behavior, and overall just slows down the gameplay. Consider this. A designer creates a hallway. The player takes 5 seconds to cross the hallway. Sprint is now introduced. The hallway has to be lengthened. The hallway now takes 5 seconds to cross with sprint. the same as before. If you do not sprint, you are now at risk for a full estimated 8 seconds that it would take you to cross the hallway. However, if you do sprint, it will take you 5 seconds, just as long as before. How did this increase the speed of gameplay? It did not. I'll show an example of this next using Halo 3 and Halo 5. Here I'm showing how long it takes to get from the back of the base to the top of Carbine on Halo 3 without sprint, Halo 5 without sprint, Halo 5 with sprint, and Halo 5 with a 120% base move speed. As you can see, moving through the map on Halo 3 was actually faster. Sprint on Halo 5 is a second longer due to the increased size of the map. If you do not sprint, it will take you just under 3 seconds longer. The difference between sprinting in Halo 5 and not sprinting is a difference of 2 seconds here. With a 120% base move speed, you are moving at essentially the same rate as sprinting. Remember that the only reason sprint is used is to speed up the mobility of the player, hence speeding up gameplay. The player cannot shoot while sprinting though, so therefore if the player can cover that distance at the same speed while having the ability to shoot, the option to shoot would increase the speed of the game. Obviously the exact base move speed should be tested extensively, but 110% or even 120% would work great for Halo 5 with sprint removed. I just thought that I would make this video today to point out all of my issues with sprint, and why it actually has a negative impact on the game. Just to reiterate, increased move speed is great. Not being allowed to shoot your gun while traveling at that move speed is bad. Thank you all for watching.